into the decision for the role to play Megyn Kelly in Bombshell?
To play Megyn? I mean, when I read this, when the script was sent to me, Charles Randolph wrote it, who did The Big Short, and I think he's just a very talented writer. And I think for wanting to tell that story, like, it was a no-brainer for me that I wanted to be a part of the film. And for a second, I thought maybe that would just entail being a producer on it. Because you know, it wasn't the kind of character that made me go, oh, yeah, like, I was scared. I was like, it was the first time that I was given a real life person who was so well known. I mean, everybody knows who Megyn Kelly is.
Right.
And that felt like a lot of pressure. And
it's also strange because watching it, it seems obvious. It seems obvious that you would want to do it, but
yeah.
Obviously there's a point when it seems like it doesn't seem like a good idea.
Yes, and I don't know about you, but I'm always thinking it's a bad idea. I'm always thinking there's somebody else out there that can do this so much better than I can, and I'm gonna...
Including this.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, we're actors, right? So we're just walking insecurities. But I think when I have the right filmmaker, I can move away from the fear, and Jay Roach was that guy for me.
Did you guys know each other before?
We were strangely developing a television show to do together, just me as a producer and him as a director, and I'd been seeing him every single day because we were kind of getting close to making this show, and as a friend, I asked him to read it and to just tell me what he thought about the idea of me playing Megyn Kelly, and he called me back 4 hours later, and he was like, you have to do this. You have to do this. And I mean, I understand the importance of the story. I understood where he was coming from, but as a filmmaker and as somebody who I really trusted, he was basically allowing me to kind of cross over that end line. And I think I respond to filmmakers who kind of, this is going to say so much about me as a person, and that I should probably be in therapy, and I can't believe I'm about to say this. But I love when a filmmaker almost believes more in me than I believe in myself. Like, there's something, when somebody does that for me, I will drag my body over broken glass for them. And Jay instantly put me in that place where I felt like, all right, if he believes that I can do this, then I'm gonna do this. And then on that phone call, I asked him to join us in making the movie. And so it all just kind of like came together in one day.
So you guys knew each other kind of socially and were working on something, and then you actually start working on it. Do you notice that it changed your friendship when you start working? Have you had that before, where you're working with someone that you kind of feel like you know, and then when you start actually working on it, you're like, oh, I actually don't like this person.
Yeah,
or
I do not like him now, no. He's a terrible guy. No, Jay is one of the most transparent human beings I've ever been around in my entire life. And I think a huge part of my safety with him initially, when he brought up the idea that I should do it, was because I think of him as one of the kindest human beings I've ever been close to. I do not know how he's capable of being so consistent with it.
Right.
But he is really just an incredibly empathetic human being. And when he started diving into the story, I think he was hyper aware of the fact that he was a man telling the story, and that people would probably look at that as like a negative. And so for him, it became incredibly important to just always be emotionally tapped into what the story was and what we were doing. And that included that, you know, he was surrounded by a lot of women, and he was the most unbelievable listener. So no, in a strange way, working with him, all of his attributes just shined brighter. And I don't know other people like that, by the way. I know a lot of assholes. No, I'm joking.
Right.
Mr. Trump, one of the things people love about you is you speak your mind and you don't use a politician's filter. However, that is not without its downsides, in particular when it comes to women. You've called women you don't like fat pigs, dogs, slobs, and disgusting animals.
You're great in it. And is there a certain point where, because you were around when you first started developing it, is there a certain point, because it's such a departure, or not, I don't say departure necessarily, but it's like you are invisible. in it, do you remember there was a moment, what costume fitting or finding a voice or a hair color that everything dropped in? You're like, okay, actually I have ownership over this now, where you kind of did take it away from Jay, I guess? Or?
Yeah, yes, because it's, I mean, you know, this stuff doesn't happen overnight. You know, it's a process, and especially when you're working with prosthetics and trying to kind of figure out how far you can go before it's distracting and before you just can't even like use your face anymore, right?
So how long was that, the prosthetic part, just that part?
So
not the like getting it in the makeup chair, like figuring out what was too much.
So I got to work with Kazuhiro, who is like the rock star. He's like the only person who plays at this level when it comes to prosthetics. Right. He's also always threatening to retire, so you're always kind of pulling him out of retirement. But he was strangely working on season 2 of Mindhunter, which is a show that I'm a producer on with David Fincher, and he was doing a bunch of serial killers on that show. And so when I reached out to him, I knew he was not in retirement because he was working on that. Sure. And I basically begged him to come on, and the reason is because he's just so good, and I knew that he, would be amazing at doing it, but he would also be a really good gauge in kind of looking to somebody else and saying like, how do we find that balance? Like, I need your help with that. So we did the first test, and I looked like a young Glenn Close. It was very strange. Never thought I had those features, but I ended up looking like a beautiful young Glenn Close, not like Megyn Kelly at all. Right. And I remember Jay kind of like hovering in the background, and I could see just panic coming out of him. He was like, this is never gonna work. And Kazu, who's this like gentle Japanese genius, was just like kind of deep humming while staring at my face.
Humming?
Yeah, he was like, You know the way artists hum, sure. Like just staring at me. And he said, he just had this look. He was like, don't worry. He's like, we're gonna figure this out. And I met with him 3 weeks later, and he had changed the prosthetics to just work differently on my face. And it was so it was the second time that I sat down with him that I realized that this was maybe gonna work.
So that was the moment, I guess, the second time the prosthetics was the thing. Yeah,
which is crazy when you think about it. That was he only had, you know, I think less than 2 months kind of looking at my face and figuring that out. But then he was so good at what he did that I kept going, oh God, now I have to bring like that same level of what he's giving me. And so it really, I mean, I think in many ways when you work with people who are that good, they push you to have to be better.
Right, and your other actors, Margot Robbie and Nicole Kidman, they were like, you know, John Lithgow, or were they from the beginning, or? Well, I mean, I don't necessarily want to say that. Have you worked with them before? Did you know them before? How did they? No,
they were pretty much every actor that we got on this film were all people that I've just been dying to work with. Nicole and I have been trying to work together for over 2 decades. And nothing ever kind of came from it, which is just so crazy to me. But it was really exciting to call her with this because I just knew that this was going to be a great opportunity for us to do something. And then Margot, I didn't know, but we had met briefly, you know, just kind of like around town. But I have just been so impressed by her, just on every level, not just as an actor, but just how she's kind of taken charge of what she wants her career to be, and I don't know, there's something about her personality that I'm very attracted to. Yeah. And I mean, there's so many amazing women in this. That was the other thing when I read this. In 25 years, I've never had an opportunity like this to work with so many women. Right. And they're all smaller parts, but they're all incredibly important in the story because all of the women really represent something so uniquely different in their experience that to me is always missing when we're telling women's stories. This idea that for some reason, if you tell a story where there's a circumstance and all these women are experiencing this, somehow they're all experiencing it in the same way. And this was such a great opportunity to show a crisis and women responding in such different ways. Right. And some of them not doing the right thing, and some of them being completely culpable. Like they were opening that door. His secretary, played by Holland Taylor, is a character that's so conflicting. But yeah, it was fun. Like Connie Britton is a friend of mine, to just call her up and be like, hey, do you want to come and work for a couple of weeks on this? And everybody really jumped to it because I think Jay is that kind of filmmaker, and Charles's script was so impressive.
What I like about the script actually is the moments where there are silence. Obviously there is a moment in the trailer of you guys in the elevator, which I think is a great moment of when the writing actually trusts the actors to and all these peripheral characters and that help tell the world. That you have that great moment with, not to give things but with the camera crew before you start your broadcast, or that kind of give you support, or the scenes with your husband, or when you go see the local affiliate. I don't know her name. That's also like a great way of just setting, the scene in a way. And the guy, and the I don't know who wrote it.
Charles Randolph.
Charles Randolph, knowing when to trust his actors, and then when actually when to use dialogue and when not.
Yeah.
It's not really a question.
No, but I love. Listen, we're actors. This is what we do. I think we appreciate when you can have a writer who then kind of marries a filmmaker, and you get these amazing actors kind of like come to the wedding. And between the two of them, I felt like it was trust, because a lot of that is written in a non-specific way, but it really is the filmmaker who ultimately decides, whether it's through editorial or in the moment, this is breathing. Like, we're gonna breathe with this, we're gonna sit with this. And some of it is uncomfortable. I mean, there's a scene with Margot Robbie and John Lithgow in this that is, and I give Jay so much credit. It's where she's being harassed by Roger Ailes, and Jay just stays in it. He just doesn't excuse it. He doesn't make it easier for you. He doesn't cut out of it. He doesn't leave. And he talks about this openly, that he wanted, if anything, he knew that his strengths would be to try and put men into the rooms of where these women were being harassed.
Right.
And I thought that, I think like all of us need to know our strengths and bring that to the table. And I think that's what sets a lot of those moments apart, because he was brave enough to say, let's just stay in that. Let's just be in here for a second, no matter how uncomfortable this is, or finding something in it, and while he was editing, just playing it longer, things like that.
They have a contractual right to monitor our communications. A hotline in this building is like a complaint box in occupied Paris. It's like we're telling women, go on, speak up for yourself, just know the entire network is with Roger. No one will believe you. They'll call you a liar.
I am always so interested, because I've had this experience myself, but when working with a director for the second time, and what that was like for you. I mean, obviously, you guys wouldn't have done it the second time around if you didn't feel like you had chemistry, right? But did anything change for you?
Change working the second time?
Yeah, with him.
I mean, it's kind of listening to your answer about, I feel like when you work with friends, or when you work with people anyway, you're seeing them at your most vulnerable, most anxious, because there's a lot of pressure, as you know, and you have to kind of get it right the first time. So people kind of can behave erratically, because they're under. But when you suddenly are in the with someone who kind of lets you know that they're in support of the thing overall, and you in particular, then you kind of naturally bond over that. I think.
Yeah.
Because you are so, it's under a lot of pressure, and I never feel like the difference between life and work and those relationships are always very blurred. It's hard for me to be friends with people I don't like working with, and the opposite. So we worked the first, thing called Francis Ha, and we just found that we had a similar way of seeing how we make something, that we're both really excited to make a movie. What an amazing opportunity that is, to we're going to make this thing that's going to live on forever. It better be worth it. It better be interesting enough, and we better drop everything to make this thing, for the time we're making it.
Yeah.
Because movies are, real, whatever. I don't know how powerful they are, but they can be very democratic in finding,
Yeah. And I don't know how long, his writing process, but is something I feel like I'm informed in some way that he has ideas in his head and they're there kind of permeating for a long period.
Yeah.
But this is literally me fantasizing about.
No, it's
like,
exactly
imagine.
right. Yeah.
And I'm wondering, did he bring up the idea of Marriage Story to you?
We've been talking about what are we going to do next for a while.
Yeah.
And then he had already been taking notes on this. Like he's like, I think I have this thing, and we talked about making a company, a movie, like would that work? Because it is kind of an abstract musical, like maybe you could make it very cinematic. And then the more we just start talking about it, the more this, I'm like, well, we should do that. That's the thing we should do. And then he started meeting with me. We would just have dinners, and then Scarlett, and then Laura, who he kind of had a mind for people. And then it turned into a very organic thing. But, you know, I think the good thing about working with friends is it kind of, you get that, you get things out of the way faster. There's less.
And you also don't have to say everything, right? It's like an unspoken understanding.
Yeah, there's no worry about this person like me. Am I giving him what they want? I know exactly what he's, not exactly what he's going for, but I know what the boundaries are. So it lets us work faster, I think. You know, I had Donna built in this whole Frankenstein thing with the plugs and.
Yeah, well, the cousins are ninjas, so we wanted to do that too.
He and I had decided together.
Oh, well, I can't make him be Frankenstein.
I'm not asking you to, but maybe you can help me out a little. I'll leave the Frankenstein here. Maybe you can nudge him in that direction.
I'm assuming, but it feels like this is a very personal story for Noah Baumbach.
It is, but it's kind of a personal thing for everybody.
No, of course, it's very universal.
Yeah, well, yeah, but everybody kind of, in this one in particular, brought their history to it. So I think that's where it kind of started, and it evolved into this thing where it was easy for everyone to make it as personal as possible. And Noah is very, I mean, the script is the script it's very much like theater. There's no real playing with it, so it does change in degrees, but we had talked about it for so much leading up to it that it felt very personal to everybody. Yeah.
And so what is your process always the same? Is the material informing you? Or do you just rely fully on your director? Like, what was that process like to find this character?
Well, for this, it's so much in the script. And again, because we had been talking about it for so long, you know, I always feel like sometimes you start a movie and it's not till you put on a costume or you're a week into shooting already. You're like, okay, now I know what I want to do. But I always let the director kind of set the tone a little bit of how I kind of work on it, actually. I never... because I already know with Noah, it is very much like theater, that the script isn't changing, but he has designed the schedule to give us a lot of takes in a lot of different ways, because I know there's no right way to
So you do you do a lot of takes? Like he loves to do a lot of takes?
Yeah, as do I. I love it, because it's like a whole theater run condensed into a day.
And the scenes are incredibly long. I mean, I'm so impressed by... And
very, choreographed and staged, obviously, or maybe not obviously.
No, I feel like physically it is, but emotionally it didn't feel that way to me at all.
Right,
and I was just so impressed by anything that lengthy. That obviously is, to me, a lot of those really long scenes were very emotional, incredibly, and to such heights. Like, you guys go from, just when you think you're at the max of the scene, you guys go even further with it. But it's like, I want to say, like, it feels like three-minute scenes. Like, they're really long. Yeah. So how, like, do you feel like every take, just a part of it changes, or do you feel like the whole thing changes after a while?
It's hard to say. I always think that I am not always the best judge of that, because I think I've changed something and it's been like tectonic shifts. Yeah. So then then Noah's like, it is, but it's in degrees. It's actually not that. But I think because he's organized the schedule to give us so many times of doing it, it does shift a lot. And then we think of other options. And then sometimes we just do one because we know this is not right, but just to kind of, maybe it'll open something else up that we hadn't thought about. And I think you can only really do that with good writing too, because good writing is so rich and it does open your imagination. If it's bad writing, it's that way.
That's when somebody said the other day, that's when actors act. When the writing is bad, that's when actors act. Yeah. But good writing can also inspire other things to kind of come out, right? Does that happen? Is that allowed? Like, did stuff?
Oh, of course,
yes.
We're militant with what the lines are, but intention is totally is totally open.
Because there were these amazing moments where I felt like you and Scarlett were finding thoughts and arguments, and I could see you guys finding it, which is like crazy to think, because I'm like, they've had this material, they've studied it, they've worked with this, and yet you guys are doing it in a way where it feels like I can see you coming to the conclusion or the argument or the point,
right,
which is so impressive.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's really good.
No, it's good, and I think, you know, I mean, it's like, yeah, it's with Scarlett, so you lucked out in a scene partner, and Noah is giving us a note, or he'll give her a note that he doesn't tell me, or the opposite, that we get to do that when you really trust the people that you are working with, and the day is organized to help you, because, as you know, nothing is really set to help you on a film set. Nothing's in place to help you do your job. You have we were just talking about this earlier, just like things breathing. You have a moment in the lawyer's office where you just kind of like stop yourself, and you're covering your mouth, and you take this uncomfortably long beat. It literally is so uncomfortable to watch you in that moment before you say something like, "I should have never let her come to LA with Henry. And I was just so impressed by your commitment to stay in that moment for that long, because I think sometimes we kind of second guess ourselves, right? And you're just completely in it. And again, it feels to me like you're finding that in your body, in your brain, in your heart, and in your soul. Like, it's happening for you in the moment, which to me is just unbelievable to watch as an actor. Oh, thank you. You know, just finding those moments where it feels like it's happening, right? It's not manipulated. We're not manufacturing it, and you're not watching the wheels turn. Yeah. And it's so beautiful. Well, I guess I mean, I come from I know this in theater, where you do a play. It's the set play. You're not changing you're not improvising. I mean, you can, but you do a run of it, 8 shows a week for 4 months, and always by the end of the last performance, I just had this. I just did a play, and the last performance was by far our best one, and we had done it, I think, 140 something times at that point, not including things in rehearsal, and I knew that and it's also really well written, and the regret that I often feel in films is that you don't really get that many times to do it. Often you're not rehearsing, and then you go home and imagine all the other ideas. Yeah. And I know that just by sheer repetition, and with good writing, it opens up your imagination. So I've learned that there's no right way a scene should work, and it's not my responsibility. It's Noah's and the editor to zero in on one. And because Noah has given us, again, room to explore what they could all mean, we get so many opportunities. We get that 4-month period into one day where there's no right answer. So if we feel like we got that, then we can, I think he makes everyone feel comfortable enough that we throw it away and ask a different question. And I think when we play the scenes, it just keeps it fresh for me. And more alive, but also, I leave with less regret that there wasn't a question that I didn't ask, that when we're shooting that, now is, I'll never get that moment again. Did you dye your hair again? Is that for your show?
No, this is me. It was this way when I saw you before.
I know, but I didn't say anything then.
You don't like it?
No, I guess it's fine. Is it shorter? I prefer it longer, but.
Sorry, it's just absurd.
You have a moment with Scarlett where you say some of it's gut-wrenching. You say some of the ugliest emotional punch, where you say that you have imagined her get an illness and that she dies, and in that moment, which is so raw, because it's completely relatable. Like, we can all relate to that, right? And that the shame after we say that. But in that moment, I literally in seconds experienced hating you, like loathing you. And by the time you're down on your knees crying, like so connected to you. Is there a part of you as an actor when you see those things that worry you sometimes? when you go, is this a moment where somebody's going to emotionally tap out if I say this? Or do you look at that as a moment of that there's a challenge behind that? And you know that's a human truth. You know that's something that's familiar to you, but it's not necessarily something that we want to put out in the forefront of like the human condition, right? But it exists. But the challenge is like, how do you do that and have people relate to it and not emotionally tap out? Like, do you ever think about those things?
I don't think about if it's well written. I think it is truthful. So I don't worry about
whether they're going to like you or not.
If the character is going to be liked or not. And actually, loyalty and switching allegiance as an audience is something that Noah and I had talked about, that he had brought up, of like, I really always wanted to make a movie where your loyalty really switches, you know, where you're with Scarlett for the first half and you hate that character, and then suddenly you actually start to meet Charlie, and then have it a different. So that overall was something that Noah wanted to do. He loves the idea of playing with audiences,
it's amazing.
allegiances,
yeah.
and I think it's hard to do.
Yeah.
But as an actor, I don't think of like, oh, I'm worried that people won't like me. You know, it's either if it's truthful, then that's not. It's not for me to say. You know, and if it's not, then it was unsuccessful. But being liked is something I don't think about, or I try not to. As far as what their character choice is it true? Is it real, or is it?
Yeah.
Or
That's
is
amazing.
it a design? Did you feel that character is something that you could just do you put characters away while you're making them? Or immediately after it's over, do you put it away, or does it still live in you for a while, or?
Yeah, I do. I mean, it was hard. It definitely took discipline for me to get to that place, but I feel like now I've kind of perfected it. And I do it for many reasons. I do it because if I stay in it for too long, I become incredibly exhausted, emotionally exhausted.
While you're shooting, or after?
No, after. If so my process was one that, I didn't quite know what my process was, and then I worked with a director who felt very strongly that we should be very method about how we went about this film. And so I was very open. I had never done it before. This was when I was much younger. And so I did it, and I was really I hated my life. I was exhausted all the time. And when I was working, I didn't feel like I had that battery that kicked in for me that made me go into the places that I knew I had to go into. And when I was tired, I just couldn't do it. And so, then you worry, well, shit, this worked for Marlon Brando, and now I can't even do this, but I really want to be good at doing this. I want to be fucking great. So how do I do that? And it took me a while to really kind of experiment, but I learned pretty early on, the more I switch off, the more I let go, which in the beginning was harder for me, but now I'm very disciplined about it. Like I go to my trailer, I take my makeup off, and it's easier now. I go home, I have 2 kids to raise, I have dog shit to pick up in the backyard. Like, it's much easier for me now to just kind of like walk into my door. The thing for me that I can't stop is the thinking process of it. So I go to bed and my brain won't switch off. And I'm thinking about everything that we've shot, what's coming up. And I'm trying to kind of like, I want to see the chart, right? And that process is very hard for me. So falling asleep, but I'm not in character. I'm not walking around being Megyn Kelly or, Eileen Wuornos or any of the characters that I've played before.
Right.
I can switch that off and I can do it in between too. Like I don't speak in the voice the whole time. It's for me personally, it's just very exhausting. But I think this is, it's great. Like I know so many other actors who thrive on that. The more they're in it, the more they discover things and things are coming for them. But I know I'm emotionally much braver when I don't overthink it and I come from a place that's a little bit more raw.
Yeah. And speaking of likability, did that come into your thought at all about
no, I mean, I've built a career on playing people that you don't love. I mean,
it's not even an idea that it makes sense to me. That
no, it's fascinating how people are fascinated by it, though. But again, for me, it's a very personal connection that I have to find with the person that I'm playing that has to make sense. I mean, there has to be, I have to get to a place where I can actually say to myself, this makes sense to me. Like this person, this emotional human in front of me, I relate, I understand. Like I struggle with the decisions and the things that they choose, but it's part of the human experience. Like yeah, I mean, I remember so vividly working with George Miller on Fury Road, Mad Max Fury Road. And we didn't really have a script. We had all these storyboards, but there was this concept of like a woman saving 5 young women like through a desert, like was like an idea that was like floating around. And like just that on its own, I was just like so like, I was like, no, I don't, like, who wants to play the woman who's like saving all the other young, like, has to be some kind of a human experience there that is faulty, that is self-serving, that is angry, that is aggressive, that is not all the right reasons. We don't always do good things for the right reasons. Mm. And this discovery process was, this man had really hurt her and she was stealing what was the most precious to him. It wasn't to save them. She didn't want to be a hero. She was trying to hurt him. He had hurt her and she was trying to hurt him back. And it's always when I can come from the back like that into a character, they might end up doing heroic things, but I don't think they set out to do those things. And Megyn Kelly, of course, is a very conflicting, I mean, she can be incredibly polarizing. There are things about her that live in the extreme. People either love her or they hate her. And she makes no excuses for that. And so those are the rules that are handed to me. I have to obey by those rules. You know, even if I'm going to go and tell a story, I can't manipulate those things, you know. Right. Yeah. I have to listen to what she's saying. She's telling me who she is, and I'm not saying like I know who Megyn Kelly is, but there's a part of her that is so amplified in the fact that she comes across really abrasive sometimes and somewhat aggressive and cold and all of these things that are not necessarily qualities that, you know, makes you want to hug a person. But I would be lying if I didn't say that I can relate to being a woman on a different degree, experiencing those same thoughts about me. You know, I have heard people describe me as cold or hard or a bitch. You know what I mean? Like those are things to a degree that even though I think we're incredibly different people, I can always find that thing that might not be so attractive and bring it back to just human circumstance. Like that's a human that I know. Like the perfect stuff is hard for me to kind of relate to. Yeah,
I also think that that's one of my favorite things about other actors or being an actor is it forces you to be empathetic. It forces you to exercise that muscle in a way that I think most jobs don't ask you to.
No.
And you are so constantly, the people that are around you is in constant rotation, whether it be something like this or on a film set. So you always have to find a new way. It's a new cast of characters. You have to figure out a way to diplomatically argue your point and like get your point across, but also be respectful of so not only in just the technical part of making a film, you have to be empathetic, but then finding your way into someone that you on the surface have nothing in common. It forces you to not make a judgment. And I feel like that's, you know, again, now I'm repeating myself, but it works its way into life, I think.
Yes.
I always feel like I try to approach things where, because you're so used to the muscle of, okay, maybe I'm the missing link in what's making this not work.
No, completely. And just when you think you have it down, the universe will kind of remind you that you need to work harder at that. Because I have always thought of myself as an actor like that. And then when I got this material, there was definitely a part of me that really struggled with my own opinions about her. And then through research, you know, like we always do, I'm like, I didn't know this woman at all. I was living my life, hearing things, snippets, and I had labeled her, and I think we all do that. And then I just kind of like carried that as a preconceived notion of who she was. And it was challenging for me to get to that place where I could put all of that aside, because I agree with you. I don't think you can do this job if you had some kind of agenda at hand, like that you were gonna, like, you know, try and tell a story that somehow carried your beliefs, or like what you want the world to kind of see. Like, there's that authentic experience for an actor is gone when you do that. And so this was definitely a reminder for me at this part of my career of just going, like, that muscle needs to be worked a little harder. You can never forget that. You can never forget it, because Megyn Kelly made it really challenging in that sense for me. So what does Star Wars mean to you?
Right. Yeah. What's that?
I mean, I think that we have a similar opinion on this. Just, I mean, and again, I'm totally assuming because I want to pretend like I know you really well. But, you know, you've worked on
we do a bright line together.
Exactly. Yeah. We've done big, giant franchise movies, and then a lot of, like, smaller films. And I mean, I know that for me, the difference is just the logistics of it, and outside of that, storytelling remains the same. It just does, and you just either you have, like, a little bit more cushion on the chair, or it's a wooden chair. Like,
right.
but you're still going to sit in it. It's still made for sitting.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, do you still feel that way? Has it changed for you?
Absolutely. I mean, no. I feel the exact same way. An audience watching a movie isn't going to think that they had really great trailers or really, good catering. It does make it easier to make it a movie, and then you can't help but do the math of, like, why is it so difficult for all these other people? But it really makes no difference. And it doesn't matter to me at all. It's just a matter of, for me, it's pace of a shooting day. I just know that a bigger movie, there's going to be more moving pieces, so the turnarounds are going to be more. Or there's.
That's why you need the nicer trailer.
Yeah,
right.
Right.
A lot of time in that trailer.
Even the thing I'm doing now, I actually feel I'm doing this movie that is director Leos Carax, and it's a musical, and it's very surreal, and his movies are very physical and choreographed, and that feels a lot like Star Wars. Even the budget doesn't even compare. But I've also lucked out with the directors that I've worked with on big budget movies, so I've never really had the experience of it. Like it's been JJ and Rian Johnson on those, so it feels like intimate, director-driven filmmakers, which is what I like. It feels like an intimate conversation that starts, however, before you start shooting, and doesn't end until it's over. I haven't had that experience so much of, movie making by committee. And I don't think I would, I just haven't had that experience. So it has felt like small, even though it's a big budget, it still felt like small filmmaking to me, in a way. You feel the same?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I mean, I really do. I feel like, again, like, at the core, what you're trying to do is be a storyteller.
Right.
And so some stories are just a little harder to kind of, like, get through a page. And that's really how I see it. I mean, ultimately, the experience, like, what I know my job is that never changes.
Right. And I like both. That's what cinema is, or films are to me. It's Jaws, and it's, I can't think of Eraserhead.